Hi everyone, it's Margaret Manning here with Retire Different. Retire Different is a community for people who want to ask great questions in order to get the right answers in order to have a wonderful retirement. And we're going to talk today about some topics that I think are really related to the women and men in our community. And I've got two people to help us unravel the mysteries. First of all, Pam Krueger. Pam is an investing and financial expert. She is an author and television personality as the co-host of PBS Money Track and also the creator of Wealth Ramp, which is an online tool that matches fiduciary advisors, unbiased fiduciary advisors to consumers. And I'm so thrilled to have you here, Pam. Welcome.
Thanks, Margaret. I love being here. I don't show up to one of our interviews without my mug of tea.
What is that? A dog on there? Is that a little dog?
It's the black dog, which is Martha's Vineyard, and you see it all over the world.
Okay. I've got my
shirts. I saw everything. That cup is gorgeous.
This is my thrift store mug. $1
Oh,
yeah.
It's beautiful.
Anyway.
I have this guy in different colors because I have a 18-year-old mini Labradoodle. And she's not a lab, but she's a Labradoodle. And so I have this cup in different colors.
Just amuse yourself there, Joshua. We'll keep talking here.
That's all right. Yeah, go ahead.
My second guest is Joshua Escalante Troesh. He is a tenured professor of business and a financial advisor. He's the owner of Purposeful Strategic Partners, which is an investment advisory firm. Now, Josh is a fee-only fiduciary advisor, one of the people who is in Pam's Wealth Ramp tool, someone who provides unbiased financial advice, and also the founder of Purposeful Finance, which is a nonprofit educational organization. So welcome, Josh.
Thank you.
It's lovely to have both of you here about a topic that we get questions about quite a bit. And that is, when you reach retirement, you don't get that paycheck every month. So you start having to pull on your savings or your whatever you've accumulated over the work years. But I wanted to ask you how you start doing that. I mean, how can you determine how much is safe to take out, given that we live longer now and the world is changing a bit? So, Pam, do you want to start the conversation there?
Yeah, because, there's no answer to the definitive question of how long you're going to live. So therefore, you can't do the math equation and work the math backwards and say, okay, I have $500,000 in savings. I can take out $20,000 a year, or I can take out $1,500 a month. How do you know? Yeah. So a financial advisor from, I don't know, maybe 30 years ago or so, developed a rule of thumb, a guideline called the 4% rule. And it's for people who have arrived at that point that you just mentioned. Now you're ready to, instead of keeping, you always want to keep accumulating, but now you have to kind of decumulate. You have to spend that money that you saved, that nest egg. And hopefully you're not doing that too early. That's another piece of the puzzle here that we'll get into. But the 4% rule just basically says that you should be, in theory, able to say that you can take out 4% a year and tap into your savings 4% a year and spend it down without running the risk of spending through your savings.
Outliving your money.
Yeah, but like everything else in money and finance, it depends on a number of different factors. But it is nice to have a rule of thumb. But Josh works with this with his clients in real life every day. So Josh, how does this guideline work in the real world, in your opinion?
So there's a lot of financial advisors that go along the lines of the 4% rule. I am not a fan of the 4% rule. And the reason why is because the way it came about is that financial advisor looked at every 30-year period over the last 60 or 70 years. And when I say every 30-year period, I mean retiring January of 1940, retiring February of 1940, retiring March of 1940, right. And figured out that if you spent 4.08% of your retirement funds and adjusted it for inflation every single year, so you're going up a little bit every single year, per year, you would never have a 30-year period where you ran out of money. The problem with that is twofold. Number one, there are some people who believe that that's too high because that included a multi-decade bull market for bonds. So bonds were doing much, much better than they are today. And it also has the issue of that assumes a 30-year retirement. Well, what about a 35, 40, 45? And while I am concerned about that, I am more concerned about the opposite, which is the 4% rule will, for many people, cause them to underspend in retirement. And there are two great sins in retirement. The first one is the one everyone talks about and everyone's worried about, which is running out of money before you run out of life. The second great sin, though, is to run out of life and die with a big pile of money instead of memories. And while people worry about that running out of money part, if you really think about it, think about yourself on your deathbed, looking back on your life. What are you going to regret more? Are you going to regret more that you ran out of money and it was hard the last few years of your life? Or are you going to regret more having $6 million in the bank and having not seen your grandchildren more than once a year, not taken that worldwide cruise you never did, not gone out to dinner with your spouse while they were still alive every Friday night, right? So we have to understand
I get it.
This is powerful. Yeah, go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, we've got the happy scenario where, you know, you're going to spend, you know, more than 4% and you're going to have that glass is half full and I'm going to spend more. And you've got that other sort of that real conservative of no way am I going to spend 4% of, let's say it's $1 million, which is a very good example because it's simple math. Mm-hmm. That would be $40,000 a year. 4% of $1 million in your savings account, and you're spending
$3,500 a month. Yeah,
not that much money, right? But that was Social Security, and or let's just say you're like, no way am I taking out that $40,000. I'm scared to death. So these are the two extremes, and you have to find yourself somewhere in the middle. So the 4% rule is intended to help people figure out which side do you see yourself on, and everybody's unique circumstances are completely, they can be to the happier side where you're going to spend more, or they could be more to the conservative side because you have reasons to be conservative. You may have real reasons why you need to feel conservative. You may have real reasons why you're a little bit more carefree and you feel like, I'm not worried about, you know, tapping into this and taking out 5%. There's no right answer. I wish that there were like a one-size-fits-all answer, but everything to do with money, there's no such thing. Yeah. But it's a great and useful guideline. And now let's continue to look at what's wrong with it, Josh. What's wrong with the 4% a year? If you were to say today, Margaret, you know what? I like that 4%. It feels right to me. Done deal. You know, today is the day I'm going to decide to do this, and I'm just going to keep doing that and go asleep at the switch. The problem is things change. The economy changes, the stock market changes. So Josh, let's talk a little bit about why it's so dangerous to get married to the 4% rule.
Can I just say something there just before you say that, and don't forget that question because it's super important. I just want to say what Josh just said earlier though is so important. This whole idea of taking your money and doing things with it that are memories. We talked about this in another conversation about legacy. Yes. And, you know, we're all obsessed with having money to give to our grandkids or children when we die. But the fact is we wanted to see those grandkids, you know, more than once every year. Yes. But I loved what you said there, Josh. And I just wanted to make sure that you knew that I was validating that from my own experience as an older person. But go ahead and answer Pam's question. That was an important one too.
So there's multiple issues with the 4% rule. The first one is that while historically you've never gone to zero, that does not necessarily mean that in the future 4% wouldn't bring you to zero. But even looking at the historical record, we want to understand when you think about where am I on the conservative versus aggressive spectrum, let's make sure we understand what the 4% rule actually ends up with. Because while 4% never brought your portfolio down to zero, in only 10% of the times of those possible instances did the portfolio even go down in value at all. Mm. In fact, half the time in those instances, you ended up with 3 times more money at the end of your life than at the beginning. And in the same percentage of time where you are between, so starting off with $1 million, you're between $1 million and $0. 10% of the time, 10% of the time you end up with $6 to $9 million, 6 to 9 times what you started with. That is a lot of missed memories. That is a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
And so we want to really understand when you're thinking about it, don't think about it as 4% is the number where it's a good spending rate.
Right.
It's the number where the absolute worst possible case scenario, you didn't run out of money. But there's a lot of other scenarios where you end up with a lot of extra money. You will see on my website, not once do I mention the phrase leaving a legacy. The phrase that I have on my website is living a legacy.
Margaret and I were just talking about this on another video, because I'm of the same school of thought about that as well. That's like the best legacy you can leave for your kids is, spending time with them and sharing your memories and sharing your wisdom.
Absolutely.
And that vacation with them.
It takes all the pressure out of it. But actually, I was going to say, as you were talking about millions, and I'm hearing people in my ear saying, Margaret, if I had 6 million, how about 600,000? It doesn't matter. Like whatever the zero is that you take off, it doesn't.
We're just trying to use the million because it's easy math.
No, and I understand why you did it.
$100,000. Yeah. $100,000 would give you $4,000 a year in income. That's not a lot of money.
No, but you have to work then. I mean, that's another thing you mentioned at the very beginning, is that the reality about your savings might involve income, that you might have to shift from focusing on what you're savings and pulling from them and adding, 4%.
The whole point is to have some visibility on something that's invisible.
Totally.
We want more visibility on something we can't see, which is the future. So with Josh knows as well that the other thing about this 4% is that people don't live life we don't live our lives in a straight line. The economy doesn't go in a straight line. The stock market doesn't go in a straight line. Your investments, depending upon how you're diversified and how you have your money invested, real estate, whatever it might be, you can't take the 4% rule and apply it for the rest of your life. It would have to be, even if you were going to use it, or you were going to use a 6% rule, you were going to use a 10% rule. You've got to reevaluate it every single year or every single time there's a change in your life, in your lifestyle. Right, Josh?
Yeah. And it's what I do with my clients is a dynamic spending plan. Right. And what that means is we have a plan, but then we look at it every single year. We look at what has happened. I don't know what's going to happen next year in the stock market, but I know exactly to the penny what happened last year in the stock market. And so as we look at this idea, it's about understanding and making adjustments. We also have to realize that a couple of other problems with the 4% rule is it assumes that every year of retirement is the same. And we know that's not true.
Right.
It is foolish to take 4% out of your portfolio and put off that massive worldwide vacation that you've always wanted to do for a decade because you're saving up for it in retirement, because you may not be able to take it in 10 years.
Yeah.
And so it may be perfectly acceptable with a proper plan to spend 10% in the first year on that worldwide vacation. And then you're going to spend much smaller amounts of money, and you're going to throughout your life. Your retirement, there's been a number of academic studies about this, that people do not spend the same amount of money. In fact, their spending goes down throughout their retirement.
Right. So now we have enough evidence and enough information to now track that spending rate, that 4% plus or minus a year, and go away from it, depending upon where you are in retirement. Because we know that statistically, people spend the most money in their retirement when they first stop working. It's like, yippee, giddy up, I'm not working anymore, let's go. And they spend in the first couple of years, the first 3 years, and then all of a sudden they get tired of spending money and traveling. And so it goes down. The point is that I'll play the other devil's advocate with you, Josh, a little bit, that somebody who doesn't have enough money really saved or doesn't really have themselves insured in any way against a long-term care kind of a need, that's where you do want to say it's unpredictable in the future. I don't want to spend 10% a year, because spending 10% a year, it might look good right now, and I like the math and I love the way this is all going, but holy cow, how much does it cost for assisted living or live-in nursing if you need it? You need more money in that last decade of life.
Yeah, and let me be clear. I did not say spending 10% a year. I said spending 10% possibly in the first year, take that vacation that you've always wanted to take, and then spending a smaller amount later on. because you don't know what your health is going to look like 5 or 6 or 10 years from now. And so it would be okay to spend a much larger amount early in retirement, not every single year early in retirement, but to do the things that you've always wanted to do, provided that you have thought about and you have a plan for who's going to pay or what's going to pay for your housing later on in life, what's going to pay for your health care, your food, and things like unexpected things like the issue of long-term care. And so it's really a dynamic environment. And
it's just like a speed limit going through a road, through a town, on a highway. Sometimes you're going through a town, you've got to slow down. Sometimes you're going on a highway, you've got to go over the speed limit.
Yep.
Sometimes you have to go under, sometimes you have to go over.
You just want to make sure you're not driving recklessly with your retirement portfolio.
Yeah. Exactly. But here's the thing I was going to add to this conversation is that I'm the oldest one in the conversation here. And I think that I could weave something in here that I think is really important. And that is, someone once said to me that aging is profound. And it really is profound, because one of the things that happens in addition to your money situation changing is that you have to change your mindset about yourself. And I know that from being 60 years old and being where I am now, that I am not so strong. When I travel now, I feel the stress a little bit more on my legs and my body. I'm getting older. And when that happens to you, it's like you said, Josh, it's like you've got to do things when you're able to do them and not think in your mind, I'm fit, I'm young, I'm this at 60. Yes, you may be at 60, but I tell you at 70, 80, it's a different world. And the sooner that we start changing our mindset about us in that age group, then the conversation about money changes too. Don't you think?
It's such a good point, and it marries so perfectly with this whole discussion about why 4%, does 4% work? You know, it just
different.
Is such a great way to think about it. Yeah.
But anyway, sorry, Josh, go ahead.
No, and I was going to say, and I mean, the issue really comes down to it's very difficult to put into a one-sentence formula how to spend your money in retirement, because our lives are not one-sentence formulas.
It would be super boring if it was. It's all
right,
good.
exactly.
This is like, it's all done. I love that quote by Steve Jobs, I think it was, about we never see where the dots connect until we get to the end.
Right.
You know? And like we're living the dots now, like we're just up and down all the dots. And then at the end, it's, oh, that's what happened.
Yeah, that's what it draws. Exactly. That's what it ends up being an elephant.
I should have done 5% back then, and then whatever. But
I'm probably more a little bit of a defender of the 4% rule than Josh is, not because I want to marry it, not because I think that it should be used year after year. I am a big fan of the dynamic. The reason I like the 4% is because it teaches people. It teaches people that, that's how I might go about thinking about spending down. Otherwise, you don't know whether you're supposed to think of it as, oh, this month I'm going to need this much, and you're never going to have any kind of an idea. And that's why I like it. You have some kind of speed limit. You can choose to go above or below according to where you are.
That's a great analogy, actually.
No, I like it.
But I think one really important thing to say is that you need people like Joshua. I mean, not to promote you particularly, Joshua, but you're a great financial advisor. But if you mentioned earlier, like you said, my clients come in every year. Who does that? I mean, that is so powerful, the thought of having someone that you can go to every year, honestly, explaining what you spent that year. And so they can give you some advice about the 5%, whatever.
Well, we actually talk 4 times a year.
Exactly. And then Pam, you're doing such a great job of making that accessible to people. Like you don't have a lot of choices.
I'm trying to educate everybody about the difference between what a real financial advisor and planner does versus an investment salesperson. Josh knows every bit as much about investments and wealth management, but his focus is, because he's not selling them, he's focused on your well-being. So that's where you're getting a holistic, and it's a whole different experience. And if more people understood that Josh exists and others like Josh exist, they wouldn't be so scared or so leery of going to a financial advisor. But of course, you always hear me say, out of all the advisors out there, people always say, you don't like advisors, do you, Pam? And I say, no, I love 5% of them.
Look,
it's a very small percentage who are like Josh.
This is such a great conversation. And, Retire Different is all about this. It's all about looking at retirement in a different way. And I think every single conversation we've had, Pam, with you and one of your colleagues and people that are fiduciary advisors has just been so eye-opening. And I'm really looking forward to the feedback on these videos. I would love to ask people that are watching this to leave your comments. What kinds of things are on your mind about retiring differently? We've covered a lot today in terms of your different topics, but what is on your mind? Leave it in the section below, because we read the feedback and we'll just have more people coming in, and Pam will be coordinating different conversations. We're honestly here to help.
and can I have my dog Chloe on the show?
You can do what you like with your beautiful dog Chloe. Where is Chloe?
She's lying down. She's in her little bed. She's 18.
Yeah, she's lived well. She's done good planning, which is what Josh is all about too.
She's got a good mama. Come on.
Joshua, thank you so much for your input, your inspiration, and your humanity when it comes to money.
My pleasure.
It's purposefulsp.com, your website, and we'll put it up on the screen, but also Pam Krueger, wealthramp.com. Thanks again for being here, for supporting Retire Different, and thank you, Pam and Joshua, for being part of the conversation today. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our Retire Different YouTube channel and check out our website at retiredifferent.com. We are a community of people who are asking questions and trying to make good financial decisions so that we can have an amazing retirement. We'll be looking at our relationship to money and also places that we can go for support, advice, and inspiration.